When I was 13, my best friend was Aiden, who was a couple of years older than me. Despite the age difference, we were inseparable, mainly because our houses were right next to each other. Our neighborhood was largely populated by older people, so there weren't many kids our age to play with. This lack of other playmates brought us even closer, and most nights we could be found outside playing various games until we got too tired or our parents called us in for the night. This was back before the internet had become a big part of our lives, so our entertainment was almost entirely outdoors. One of our favorite games was a variation of hide and seek where the seeker had to use a flashlight at all times. The main rule was that the seeker had to keep the flashlight on, and the hider was considered found if the light revealed them. This twist made the game much more interesting because the hider could use the light to figure out where the seeker was and reposition themselves strategically. Conversely, the seeker could end the game quickly by shining their light in the hider's direction from a distance. We typically set the boundaries to include only the close parts of our neighborhood. However, our neighborhood was bordered by a massive stretch of woods, and sometimes we made things more exciting by including the woods in our playing area. We never set a strict limit on how far the seeker could go, but we generally didn't venture too deep into the woods, especially since we played the game at night, which made the setting quite eerie. One particular night stands out vividly in my memory. It was my turn to hide, and Aiden and I agreed to use the woods as our playing area. Wanting to make the game more challenging, I decided to hide farther out than I usually did. As I ventured deeper into the woods, I quickly started to regret my decision. The further I went, the darker it became, with no house lights to guide my way. Without Aiden's flashlight, I had only the faint light of the moon to navigate by, making it difficult to see more than a few feet ahead. After walking for what felt like an eternity, I stumbled upon an abandoned cabin. I knew immediately that it would be the perfect hiding spot. There was no way Aiden would find me in there. I carefully stepped inside, feeling my way around in the darkness until I found a set of stairs. I climbed them slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. At the top, I discovered a small bedroom with a single window that looked out towards my neighborhood, though by this point, it was too far away to see any familiar lights. I settled into the room, confident that I wouldn't be found. I sat there for a long time, listening to the sounds of the night. After what felt like hours, I saw a shadowy figure through the window. It was Aiden, or so I thought. But something was off. He wasn't using the flashlight. Clearly, he must have gotten tired of constantly revealing his position and decided to either cover it with his hand or turn it off completely. As I watched, his dark silhouette moved closer and closer to the cabin. Soon I began to hear the crunching of leaves under his footsteps as he approached. Suddenly I caught a glimpse of Aiden, far off in the distance, with the flashlight still on. My stomach dropped as I realized that whoever was approaching the cabin wasn't Aiden. Panic set in. Instinctively I scrambled to hide. I slid under the bed, trying to control my breathing and stay as quiet as possible. The footsteps continued, now inside the cabin. They were slow, deliberate. Whoever it was moved with purpose, not like someone playing a game. The footsteps got louder as they climbed the stairs. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears, drowning out almost all other sounds. Then I heard the unmistakable click of a gun being cocked. My heart raced even faster. Moments later, I saw large boots step into the room. They were much too big to belong to Aiden. The figure stood still near the door, as if scanning the room. It felt like an eternity before they finally turned and left. I waited a few moments to be sure they were gone. Then, seizing the opportunity, I crawled out from under the bed and made my way to the window. Without hesitation, I jumped out and hit the ground running. I didn't look back, but I could hear the footsteps behind me, gaining on me. My legs burned and my lungs ached, but I pushed myself to keep going. Eventually, I burst out of the woods and into the open, where I spotted Aiden. He saw me running and pointed his flashlight at me, thinking he had won the game. But when he saw the terror on my face, his expression changed instantly. His eyes widened as he glanced behind me and saw the dark figure chasing me. He turned and started running with me towards my house. We sprinted as fast as we could, our footsteps pounding on the pavement. We reached my house and practically fell through the door, slamming it shut and locking it behind us. Both of us were breathless and shaken, trying to comprehend what had just happened. Aiden, still catching his breath, asked me who the man chasing me was. Hearing him say this gave me goosebumps. I recounted the entire story, from the moment I decided to hide in the cabin to the terrifying realization that the person inside wasn't him. Aiden listened intently, not questioning a single detail. After I finished, we decided to tell my parents, though we downplayed the situation as much as possible to avoid alarming them too much. They ended up calling the cops, who came out to search the cabin and the surrounding woods. They searched for hours but found no trace of anyone. From that night on, our parents forbade us from going into the woods, and frankly, that was fine by me. The experience had been extremely traumatizing, much more so for me than for Aiden, at least as far as I could tell. We never went back to that cabin, and we still can't explain who we saw that night. The memory of that night remains vivid, a chilling reminder of the unknown dangers that lurk in the darkness. My name is Jeff, and this story is about one of the first times my parents left me home alone. I was probably 12 or 13 at the time, though I'd been staying by myself since I was around 10. That might seem a bit young to some, but it was normal for us. My mom always warned me not to answer the door or phone when I was alone, but I occasionally broke that rule, especially if a friend called. I didn't want to miss out on anything. One evening, around 8 p.m., while my father was away on business and my mom was out doing something I can't quite remember, I was watching TV in the living room. I was completely absorbed in my show when the doorbell rang. At first I ignored it, figuring it was probably just a solicitor or someone making a delivery. However, when it rang again, my curiosity got the better of me. I walked to the front of the house, deciding I would just peek out the window to see who it was without actually opening the door. I carefully moved the curtains aside and saw a middle-aged man standing there in a uniform. He looked like a mechanic or some kind of repairman, wearing a blue-collared shirt with a name tag, though I couldn't read the name from where I was standing. I watched him for a few seconds, trying to decide what to do, when he suddenly looked over and saw me. I was caught. He smiled, waved, and called out, "Hey there, son. We got a report of a gas leak. Can you let me in?" My heart started to race. I quickly closed the curtains and took a step back from the window. I knew I wasn't supposed to open the door for strangers, but if there was a gas leak, that could be dangerous. Torn between following my mom's rules and the potential risk, I reluctantly turned the deadbolt and opened the door a crack. The man was really friendly and jovial, assuring me he needed to check the gas lines inside the house. Trying to think quickly, I told him I wasn't supposed to let strangers in and asked if he could speak to my mom or dad. He persisted, asking if my parents were home. That was when a chill ran down my spine. I realized he was trying to figure out if I was alone. Panic set in as I tried to come up with a believable lie. The best I could manage was to say that my dad was in the shower, hoping it would buy me some time. The tension in the air was palpable as we stood there, each pretending everything was fine. I felt like I was on the verge of tears when I saw one of my neighbors across the street walking her dog. She immediately noticed me standing on the porch with a strange man and must have sensed something was wrong. As soon as the man saw her coming towards us, he turned around and walked briskly back to his van, then drove off without another word. My neighbor hurried over and asked who the man was. I explained what had happened, telling her he claimed to be with the gas company and mentioned a gas leak. She calmly told me to stay inside while she called my mom. Within minutes, my mom rushed home, her face pale with worry. After hearing my story, she immediately called the police. It was then that I realized how serious the situation had been. The police took down all the details, but we never found out who that man was. When my mom called the gas company, they confirmed they hadn't sent anyone to our house and there was no reported gas leak in the area. The whole experience left me shaken, and it was a long time before I felt comfortable being home alone again. My parents became much more cautious after that, and so did I. One day after school, I came home to an empty house. It was a pleasant spring afternoon, so I decided to leave the main door open to let the fresh air in, with only the screen door closed but unlocked. Growing up in a small town where crime was almost non-existent, I didn't think twice about it. After all, break-ins were virtually unheard of in our tight-knit community. I put my dog on his leash in the backyard, giving him some time to run around and do what dogs do. Then I went back inside and settled down on the living room carpet to watch some TV. The house was quiet except for the sounds from the television. As I relaxed, the show I was watching cut to a commercial break, and the screen went blank. In the sudden stillness, I caught sight of a large figure looming behind me. My anxiety skyrocketed. My heart sank to the pit of my stomach, and my throat tightened up, making it hard to breathe. Though it was only a matter of seconds, it felt like time slowed down as I began to turn my head. Panic set in, and my mind raced with questions. Why hadn't my dog barked to alert me? Then I remembered he was tied up outside. As I turned my head slowly, I saw through my peripheral vision that the figure wasn't a person. It looked like a black animal. My mind immediately jumped to the worst conclusion: a bear had somehow entered my home and was about to attack me. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. Finally, I turned fully to face the intruder. To my immense relief, it wasn't a bear at all. It was my neighbor's dog, panting and giving me a friendly, puppy-like smile. I let out a deep breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The big mutt must have gotten free from his yard, and since I hadn't fully latched the screen door, he had easily pushed it open and wandered in. Still shaken but now amused, I walked the dog back over to my neighbor's house. We had a good laugh about the whole incident. Despite the initial terror, everything had turned out fine. I couldn't help but reflect on how lucky I was that it had just been a friendly dog and not something more dangerous. From that day on, I made sure to always latch the screen door securely, not willing to take any more chances with unexpected visitors.